Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Sunday Sermon with Ola, episode 21. And yeah, I'm very grateful for all the great feedback from last week's episode. 20 episodes, like I said, is a big consistency milestone for me. So I'm happy about that you guys are celebrating with me. And for everybody that jumped on the live, it was good to have special guest Jamali Maddox, who just decided to jump on. And to all of his followers who listened for the first time, thank you guys for joining in. I love to see the growth. I love to see, just the possibility of building content around community and seeing what that can do in terms of growth and creating a new dimension in which to enjoy and connect with other people. So that's the whole purpose of what I'm doing here. It's, I've always thought that one of the greatest strengths about church is the strength of community. And I just thought, you can bring that to comedy, you can bring that to podcasting. That's why I did Sunday service. That's why I did Sunday sermon. So it's good to see that it continuously works. You can bring in different pockets of society. You can have through conversation, through exchange of ideas, through laughing together. We can all be together. It sounds corny when I say it now, but it's kind of what's driving all of this, and more of the projects that I've got coming in the pipeline. And speaking of projects coming in the pipeline, I want to say thank you again to all the patrons that I mentioned last week. Shout out to all the patrons. You guys are funding some very interesting projects, and if they go well, it would be fantastic. And so, whilst I definitely appreciate the fact you financially putting your money where your mouth is, I also highly appreciate the love and support that I get. Okay, I always start off with thanks. Same for Sunday sermons, same for Sunday service. We always start off with thanks. Now let's get into it. All right. So today I wanted to talk about, how can I put this? I wanted to talk about the importance of principles. Um, One of the things around this topic is the fact that I usually direct this at men because I think it's very important for men to be principled. And this is something that's clearly very important to me. As with most of the topics, this is my viewpoint. So a lot of things I'm going to say here are very subjective, but I hope that there's something in it for you. It does apply to women as well. These are general human being principles, but I specifically want to say it to men because of the trap that men find themselves in sometimes. Okay. I think it's very, very important as a man to decide who you're going to be. Make a very conscious decision about who you're going to be. And when you decide who you're going to be, no one leads you to get there. You have to lead yourself. I feel like a lot of the discussions around men come down to things like discipline, which is very, very important. But I want to take a broader term in terms of self-leadership. I talk about how much I believe men are needed to lead in the home, in their societies, and so on. But I don't think I think sometimes I skip over one of the necessary building blocks for men to become leaders, and that's self-leadership. Why am I stressing self-leadership? One of the reasons why is just because of the number of cheating allegations that have come out this week. Where it's coming out that men are cheating on the women that they're in their life. Even just as I'm recording this, and this will give you an idea of how late I'm recording this. There's an old Nigerian artist. I wouldn't say old, but my favorite album of his is from a few years ago now. Called Nice, spelled number 9 ICE, and he just put out a video asking his fans to help him beg his wife for forgiveness because he cheated. There was also allegations of UK rappers cheating, and so on and so forth. And there have been a couple of things I've seen this week that have just reminded me of the importance of having your own principles and being a principled human being. Now, one of the things I want to stress about being principled as a human being is all too often it's easy to define yourself. People start thinking in terms of what they won't do. Oh, I would never do that. Right? That seems to be the first thing. Even if I talk to you about cheating, if you're sitting there right now as a guy who doesn't cheat, right now you'd be like, well, I would never do that. But I think it's also important for us to define ourselves in terms of what we actually do. Right? Because sometimes, if you don't have a plan for what you actually will do, you'll consistently press and expand the borders and sometimes even push into what you say you wouldn't do because you didn't actually have a plan for what you were going to do. It's like sometimes the Christian or church's approach to sex is so much based on like don't have sex before you're married, don't do this, don't do that. That so many Christians get married and from a Christian perspective have no idea what to actually do. So then they end up trying to look for somewhere to show them what to actually do. They end up right back at the same sources as everybody else, magazines, porn, whatever. And now they're trying to figure out, is it okay for me to do this? Blah, blah, blah. Because they've never actually once considered, what do I actually do when I get to the point of like getting married and having sex and so on? All they've considered is, oh, don't have sex, don't have sex, don't have sex. In the same way, it's the same for life. If all your principles are around what you won't do, you won't have a plan for what you should do. And then you end up doing what you said you wouldn't do anyway. That's one of the main points I want to make about being principled. And these are things that I've learned over time and I've treasured. And like I said, it's highly subjective because the importance of principles can be frustrating to those around. The level to which I keep my principles can be frustrating to my wife. I know this, especially where maybe she's a bit more lenient. But one thing I do know is that the frustration pales in comparison to the respect that you garner as a man when you have principles that you won't move on. No, I'm not saying just be a dinosaur and you don't ever change, you don't ever adapt. No, those things are important. But it's very important to first of all have some grounding on some core values, on some principles, some things that will not change. Then everything else around that can mold and shift, right? So, for example, Apple want to be at the cutting edge of technology. That's one of their core principles. Does that mean they have to consistently make the same products? No, they can branch into other products and still apply the founding and grounding principle. If you understand that concept, then you know that in your life, it's not like saying, oh, one of my principles is I always have to eat a specific meal on a specific day every week. That's pretty silly. It's pretty silly to base your life around the fact that I eat fish and chips on a Friday. Because the day you don't eat fish and chips on a Friday, you fall apart over something that's fairly meaningless. But if, let's say, you said, one of my principles is to support a local business. And one of the ways in which I do that is to go and buy a fish and chips from my local fish and chip shop every Friday. Then that means even if you were to move house or whatever it is, you can carry on the same principle of supporting your local businesses. And the way you do it will shift, but the principle will still be there. So we have to start thinking about what our principles are. So why do I always say this to other men? I say it for a few reasons. One, and I'm going to get it out the way because it really shouldn't be our focus. But one is just because of the amount to which women need security. And women need security in the sense that they know they can trust you. You're going to be loyal. Your word is your bond. And they don't need to worry about anything else. They observe that from how principled you are. It's not so much about just what you say. It's about how you behave. They observe how you respond to things, how you respond to invitations. If you're easy to flake, or if you often turn off your phone on your friends or whatever it is when they're calling you, they're going to assume, like if you have a woman in your life, she's going to assume that you probably do that to her every time you miss one of her calls. So I'm not saying you should live your life like you're constantly, on an interview, but I'm saying that like the people closest to you are taking notes. And the same goes when you become a father as well. If your kids know that every time you say something, there's a good chance it's a lie, they will internalize it. And they will really start to believe that, like, you can't really trust what dad says. You have to take everything dad says with a pinch of salt. And the day you actually want to be taken seriously, you'd be surprised that your kids have this impression of you. But the main reason why I'm saying this, and because I've said that one, but I don't want that to be the focus. I don't want our lives to simply revolve around trying to impress women or trying to impress others. I think it's a fair thing to consider, but I don't think it should be the basis of life. The reason why it's important for you to guide yourself and to lead yourself through guiding principles is because as a man, I believe that men arise to the level of expectation placed on them. And I've said this before. I said this in one of the lives. I think when we were talking about black fathers, I talked about the importance of expectation and how if you have poor expectations of men, men rise to poor expectations. And that is true. And it's very important for parents, for the women in men's lives and so on to understand the need to have of having a positive expectation of the man in your life to bring out the best in him. But I also believe men, we need to jumpstart that for ourselves. We need to jumpstart that by having principles. And remember, I said it's not just about things you won't do, but things about you're actually going to do. If it's your principle that prayer is the most important thing, so every morning the first thing I must do is pray. If that's one of your guiding principles, that's one of the things that's going to help you reach the level that you want to reach in life. I think too many times, man, and I can pontificate and just kind of speculate as to why it's this way. But I think all too many times, men in today's society are approaching life in a way that says, let me see what I can get away with. Almost like they have no grounding. They have literally no anchoring, nothing. Their only guiding principle is what can I get away with? And this is the reason why, like, as the tide shifts, men's behavior will shift. But you have to ask yourself, why did the tide have to shift first? Right? So, like, if there was a time in history in which it was perfectly normal and something to brag about with your friends to roofie a girl or to get her drunk so you can have sex with her, you have to ask yourself, why does that culture prevail so much without men individually leading themselves and saying, that doesn't sit right with me as a human being? First of all, the entire culture has to shift, and then all of a sudden men are like, oh, that's absolutely disgusting behavior, I'd never do that. But that's because you defined yourself on what you would never do. And until somebody has told you that this is the most terrible thing, you'll willingly try whatever. Men do have guiding principles. It's just usually sometimes it's around the most, I would say sometimes the most inconsequential stuff. Like you can't change who you support as a football team. I would never cheat on my barber. Like some of these principles, I'm like, yo, is this really what life is about? And obviously anything, if you're heterosexual, there's a lot of principles around like not doing anything that seems slightly homosexual. But none of that energy goes into most of the positive things needed for life. Now, obviously, there are lots of men out there who are achieving great things, greater than I could ever imagine. I can't speak down to men because I know how hard it is sometimes as a man to like rise above the negative narrative and how so many of us have to carry negative narratives around with us no matter how well we do. But one thing, the reason why I'm saying it in this situation is because I think even those who are doing the greatest things can always use a reminder of self leadership. The fact that we can see a man like Bill Clinton arise to the most powerful office in his nation, and some would say in the world, and still fail in the self leadership that's necessary to maintain his marriage vows, shows you that none of us are beyond a reminder of how important self leadership is. Self leadership it's a mentality idea. It's not just a series of behaviors. It's the way in which you look at life and the way in which you look at your place here on earth. And if you see it simply as a, free for all, grab what you can while you're here, then of course you won't look at life and think, okay, I need to be principled in any manner. But if you have any sense of purpose, you know how important it is to be principled. How can you be a rapper who, you'll secure money coming in, deals, brand deals, record sales, a wonderful woman who, by your accounts is fantastic, to everyone else's account looks fantastic, seem like you're a lucky guy, seem like you're doing really well, and then still want to throw it away over some temporary pleasure. Nobody's infallible, by the way. Even if you have principles, you can still slip up. But I have a sneaky suspicion that the reason why we see some of the rates of slipping up that we see is because of a lack of a firm footing. When I talk to people about like changing how we look at sex, removing the performance aspect from it, thinking about it more in terms of relationship, understanding why so many faith structures and cultures and the Bible and and Christianity and the church and whatever it is, why they stress the importance of waiting for marriage and to no longer think of that as restriction but to think of that as protection. When I stress all of these things, it's because I want us to realize how bastardized our current culture has treated a lot of things in our lives and sold it to us just simply for its own benefit, and we think it's for our benefit. If somebody's telling you, like, do whatever you like, once you're single, you're free, enjoy your sexuality, they have no responsibility over you when you're dealing with spiritual, emotional, or relational issues following from it. If somebody tells you, like, porn is not a big deal, they're not with you when you're having problems settling down with one woman or being truly satisfied with this one woman or finding a way to truly connect with this one woman because essentially your eyes are elsewhere. I say it because I've been there and I'm like, yo, brothers, I'm trying to show you that, this is not all that glitters is gold. So ask yourself some of the motivations behind these things. If somebody completely sells you on hedonism, ask yourself, does hedonism yield the results I want for my life? If you look at, an example, the one that comes to my mind is King Solomon in the Bible. On all accounts, he's the richest guy in the world. He has 700 wives, 300 concubines, 300 women just for sex. I don't even know what the wives were for after a while because, like, you're not relating with each one of them on a one-to-one basis. That, hey, who's going to take out the trash today, blah, blah, blah. 700 wives, then 300 concubines. Just women for sex. Can you imagine? Is there any kind of sex that you can imagine that guy hasn't experienced? He would have collected them from around the world like Pokemon. Then every night he's like, I choose you. And then he's like, literally, my guy can just be like, hey, pick a number between 1 and 1,000. 732? All right, call 732 tonight. That's what life was like for him. And yet, if you read most of his accounts, most of his writings, the guy sounds hella depressed. The guy's like, oh, there's nothing new under the sun. There's a time for everything. The guy sounds hella depressed. He says he's tasted everything there is to taste on this earth. He comes back round to say that God surpasses them all. And that's somebody who had all the wisdom in the world and still just swayed by like distractions, pleasures. Here, there we go. I want this, I want that. All the wisdom in the world. Some simple principles could have saved him from a lot of his downfall. If he just held to one principle, which is that I only serve God, rather than serving some of the gods that his wives brought in. But because he wasn't grounded in that enough, he was easily swayed. Fine girl comes, she's got big bum. She says, oh, this is the new practice. You're ready to go with it. This is what happens too often. This is what happens too often with us as men. You know, I said sometimes I speculate and I pontificate as to why this is the case. You know, sometimes, and I think, you know, I want to make it clear from the beginning, I don't say this to doggone single mothers as the son of a single mother. I'm saying this because this is my experience and this is what's made me think some of these things. I think a lot of us are growing up in de facto matriarchal microcosms. Right? If you get what I'm saying? Like, even if you want to say it's a patriarchal world, you can still live in a little microcosm in which maybe your dad's not around, so the mum is the main voice of authority in your life. Then you get to school and let's say a vast majority of the teachers are female. And so in this process of growing up, you can start to really conflate the idea of the women in your lives essentially all being surrogate mothers. And unfortunately, the relationship that happens in that dynamic is that you consistently push boundaries and you test the love of those women in your lives. And that love is shown back to you in forgiveness, allowing you to express yourself, because there's a fundamental like lack of understanding between what it is to be you as a man and for them as a woman. Maybe they're a bit more lax with you. They're way more strict on the women, on the daughters, on the girls. There's way more responsibility on the girls. There's way more latitude given to you. So you grow up using women as your boundaries. If a woman lets you get away with it, it's okay. And you never grow up with the level of responsibility that it takes to lead yourself, regardless of if a woman is there or not. If I think back, there's some times where I have been tempted to almost to the point of death. That's how I felt at the time. Obviously, I'm alive. But the strength I gained from sticking to my principles in those temptation moments, no one can take that away from me. I'm talking about, like, it's on the platter. It's here. Just take it. You remember last year I talked about taking a sniff? You're like, I could just take a sniff. Just take a sniff. And I still was like, nope, I'm not doing it. On many different occasions. Obviously, sex is one of them. And sex is one I've obviously failed on many occasions. But then there's also to do with money and cheating, business, or whatever it is. Doing some kind of crime that I feel I could get away with. And every single time I've pulled back and I've been like, nope, not doing it. The power that I receive from that, no one can take that away from me. So as a man, it can't be just based on if you get caught or, you know, basically the nice that I mentioned. The only reason why it seems the only reason why he's really apologizing right now is because he was brazenly on video with his side chick and it got leaked to social media. I'm asking you, like, at what point were you on video with your side chick looking, kissing on the cheek, blah, blah, blah? At what point did you get that comfortable that you could do that with a side chick? If you know what you're doing is like so clandestine, you've got so comfortable with it. because you were allowed, like you were given the space within which to do it. So you have to get to a point for yourself as a man. And now he's talking about how much his life is falling apart and so on. I'm like, guys, you don't want to be the 40-year-old guy crying on camera trying to appease your wife, sad because she's leaving you. How many times you seen grown dudes crying and apologizing? Is that who you want to be? Nah, brother, not me. That's one of the reasons I don't cheat. Of course, there's many reasons, my faith, blah, blah, blah. But I just don't want to be the dude looking into the camera. You set the camera up like, I just want to say to my baby, I love you, I miss you, and I messed up, and nah, no, sir, not me. I can't be that guy. Now you crying like a little teenage girl on TikTok. What's wrong with you, bruv? Nah, you have to lead yourself way before that. Because you might even have friends that encourage it. And so, you have to now ask yourself, what is it I need to do to live the life that I want to live? These guys won't be there with you when you're crying, trying to find your wife, trying to make it up to her. And obviously these things apply both ways. But I just say because men, it seems too often these days, men have really based their boundaries on what women let them get away with. And I think that needs to change. I think whenever we talk about women being responsible, when men say stuff like, my wife is always right, and so on, or she's the boss, listen to her, it's a very backhanded compliment. Because what they're doing is they're infantilizing themselves so that they can get away with almost childish behavior without having to step up and take on the responsibility of their own actions sometimes, because they're kind of going on this, my wife is always right flex. No. Women, look, even if you let a woman tell you exactly what to do, women can't build their own perfect man. How about that? No woman on this earth can build her perfect man. If she builds what she thinks is her perfect man, she will be upset with him within 5 days, I'm sure of it. She'll be bored, upset, something. No woman can build a perfect man. So it's not about waiting for her to mold you. It's about you becoming who you are. And let her discover it and be pleasantly surprised every time she peels back a layer. That's what it has to be. That's why you can't listen to everything. One of the reasons why I started this topic, or I wanted to do this topic, is because I found out about Obama basically going against Michelle Obama's wishes in running for president. She didn't want him to. If you just went, oh, my wife is always right, I just kind of have to follow what she says, blah, 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 trying to do like a good guy, it'd be foolish. I think most people can look at it now and say, nah, this guy needed to be president, right? Like, even just for the optics. Even if you disagree with all his policies, blah, 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 even for the optics. It was so historic. I went for the inauguration. It was a big moment. I was there. I was like, yo, this feels fantastic. You can't take that away from like human interaction to see that moment. So if he just listened to his wife and didn't have his own drive and his own principles, that if he listened to her, she could end up still turning around to him and say, oh, you didn't push hard enough in life. And you'll be looking at her like, what do you mean? I wanted to be president. You told me I couldn't run. And I'm not even somebody that says to go against your partner. I believe in cooperating and having agreement and so on. But you have to have a point where you stand for something that you don't move on. You have to, or else your wife doesn't even get a chance to get to know you. She just gets to know whatever she thinks she wants to see. And women get very bored very quickly. Anyway, I need to wrap this up. Join me on the live. Let's talk about this. Instagram live, 8 p.m. at olathecomedian. I want to hear from you guys. Yeah, man. Guys, have a great week. Stay blessed.